Okay, so we are today going to be covering the final concepts of the course, particularly as it pertains to the project on which we're working, and going to quickly review the framework again, and which is important to do to remember that each aspect of marketing strategy formation, we are working within the context of the large framework. We're going to talk about positioning, perceptual mapping as a strategy to develop strong positioning statements, the unique selling proposition, and the value proposition. Okay, so this is the framework for marketing strategy formation that we've been working within, the 6 parts of the marketing process. And we were primarily within this part here from the beginning, the industry analysis and competitive research, the Porter's 5 forces analysis, the customer demographic psychographic analysis as part of the 5 C's. And we're moving into, or began to move into, the marketing planning. We're kind of right here and also working here as well. Monitoring and auditing and the implementation are what's going to be done by Sherry, who is the founder of the MKE Urban Winery Project. And she'll be able to implement these components based upon the work that you're doing. So the details of the framework, that is the 3 interrelated elements of the marketing strategy formation process as part of that larger framework. The way I like to explain what this is, these whole elements in the context of the marketing strategy formation framework, is consider this the car, the exterior of the car. So you're walking around the exterior of the car, and that car has all these different parts. And this would be the equivalent of popping the hood. This is what makes the car run. Consider this the engine of the car. So again, you've performed this, you've done all this analysis, and you've begun working on segmentation and targeting. So all of this analysis and research form the foundation to identify market segments and target markets. You've done the demographic and psychographic analysis. And after you've done that, now we can move on to positioning as part of the 4 Ps. And the outcomes of doing the analysis, which creates the ability to make these decisions, again, is acquisition, so acquiring the customer, having a buy rate, retaining the customer, which turns into sales profits, and perhaps franchising and position in the market. So let's talk about positioning. So positioning, and if you think about positioning, think of it in a physical sense. It's like the company's position relative to its competitors. And the goal here is to create a positioning strategy that differentiates Milwaukee Urban Winery Project from its competitors. So positioning the product or service so that customers understand its ability to fulfill their needs and wants, a mix of product, price, promotion, and place. And the challenge here is to develop unique combinations of these marketing mix variables. Again, to set this business apart from all others, make it completely unique, make it stand out, and creating a perception that the offering of this particular business is different, better, and will fulfill customer needs and wants better than the competitor. And it's that effective market research that's supporting the successful positioning. So one of the things that you're going to be doing as part of this module is perceptual mapping strategies. Perceptual maps are really useful tools in helping you really visualize and identify a positioning strategy. There is a handout from Marketing Management Text that will help you walk through this as part of the project and what you'll be doing as part of this module. And this is really just a very simplistic example of how to use a perceptual map. And in this particular example, the competitive aspects that were identified were quality. So in this case, you would put low quality and then high quality on this axis. And then the other competitive aspect about this particular industry is price, high price and low price. You're going to be working on identifying which competitive aspects should be those that you use as differentiating factors in the industry. So what are those factors based upon the competitors you've identified that they're mainly competing on? So what you do is you actually plot the competitors on this map. So for instance, in this example, brand A was identified as having a high price and high quality. Brand C also high price, high quality, maybe a little bit lower in price and maybe a little bit, not as high quality perception as brand A. Brand B was identified as having high price but perhaps perceived as low quality. Brand D is competing on low quality, low price. So this could be, using real examples, maybe Walmart is perceived as low price, but maybe not, as high a quality as other retail stores. High price, high quality. Maybe this is Nordstrom's or Neiman Marcus, and maybe this is Macy's. So if you're opening up a retail store, how would you want to compete? And what you look for is the white areas is what they call them. So you might want to open up a store that competes upon high quality and low price because there's no other brands in this quadrant. And that's the basics of how you do perceptual mapping. Again, you're going to be doing this with your team as part of this module. So those points of differentiation, and again, in this case, it would be low price and high quality, a mixture of those variables, is the foundation for developing a positioning statement and the unique selling and value propositions that we're going to be talking about in just a minute. So what you do want to avoid when you're developing a positioning strategy is there's four things: under positioning, over positioning, confused positioning, and doubtful positioning. And they're pretty straightforward. So under positioning is, when you develop a position in the industry where it's very vague and your customers really aren't sure what it actually is that you're competing on, and not really perceiving a real difference. Then there's also over positioning. Consumers have a narrow understanding of a company, product, service, or brand, and where you're really being too detailed about the differentiating factors. And the danger of that is a company's image can become associated with only like one product, and it really makes it difficult to develop other products or services and diversify. Confused positioning. When you are changing your positioning too much, and it can create a lot of difficulty in creating a strong brand identity and make it very difficult for consumers to understand what it is you're competing on, what's special, unique about that business. Doubtful positioning. Again, it's, from the consumer perspective, it's a claim that maybe a company can't really stand behind. And the example here is firms who have bad safety reputations, putting themselves safety first. Another example might be right now Wells Fargo is having a difficult time reclaiming its position in the financial services industry because of all the fraud perpetrated on their customers. So it'd be very difficult for them to position themselves as customer first. So that would be an example of doubtful positioning. So one of the things you're going to be doing as part of this module is working to develop a positioning statement. Basically answering the question, okay, how should this company position itself in relation to its competitors? And a positioning statement, along with the USP and VP, form the foundation for an integrated marketing communications plan. And there are 6 things that you want to keep in mind if you want to refer to the handout that you were to download. Making sure it's simple and memorable, and making sure it's tailored to the target market. So consider the markets you identified, the demographics and psychographics in particular of that market, and making sure that positioning statement communicates fulfilling wants and needs for that market. And it's, a clear picture that this brand is different than the competitors, and it's credible. It has to be credible and realistic, something that the brand can deliver. If you're going to make a promise, you have to make sure that you can deliver on it, and that's part of the value proposition also. And something that you can own, okay? And it helps you evaluate whether or not marketing decisions are consistent, but also leaves room for growth. So that's that. You want to make sure you're not over-positioning. So on the handout and what you're going to be doing in the Google Doc that was created for collaborating on this is identifying points of differentiation or key competitive aspects. So again, using that perceptual map to identify, okay, what are the points of differentiation of MK Urban Winery upon which they can compete against competitors? What makes them different? Give, a reason to believe is just what it says. So here's an example of what Amazon's positioning statement was. And this is just a very basic template for writing a positioning statement. And this is also outlined in the Google Doc that you'll be working in. So then there's the unique selling proposition. It used to be known as a slogan. The unique selling proposition is extremely important because it is this brief, clear statement that communicates to the consumer, okay, this is what is unique about Milwaukee Urban Winery Project. This is what makes them completely different, that you would want to choose them over any other competitor. And again, what it says here, it's your company's DNA and reason for being. And this is extremely important. If you cannot summarize exactly what sets you apart in 1 or 2 sentences, you are not unique enough within your marketplace. So here's a few writing tips. Putting yourself in your customer's shoes, kind of, really look at, okay, what is it the customers really want? Know what motivates the customer's behavior. Refer to the psychographics of the markets that you identified. And uncover the real reasons customers buy your product instead of your competitors. So here are some examples of a few unique selling propositions. Some of them you might be extremely familiar with. I did provide some links in the Google Doc that you're going to be working with for some other samples of unique selling propositions, as well as some tips on how to write them. Avis, we're number 2, we try harder. Target, expect more, pay less. Again, you're probably very familiar with these, but these are examples of companies that had very successful unique selling propositions. And then there's the value proposition. And that's different than the unique selling proposition is. It's a promise of what value you're delivering from the business or service. So the value, not what you're actually selling or providing, but the value that is being delivered through purchasing the product or service that is being offered. So again, answering the question, what is so unique about your business that differentiates you enough to make a customer choose you over another? The promise of value to be delivered. It's the core of competitive advantage. It clearly articulates why someone would want to buy from your company. And it's also one of the most important conversion factors. And conversion factors in turning a potential customer into an actual customer. There's a few tips for writing powerful value propositions. Identify the benefits your product offers. Describe what makes them valuable. Again, there's that word value. Identify what the customer's main problem is. So what problem are you solving, or what need are you fulfilling from that value proposition? And connect that value to your buyer's problem. Differentiate yourself, differentiate this business as the preferred provider of this value. So now it's time to brainstorm and get creative. This is kind of the fun part of the project. You've done all this analysis and research, industry research, economic research. You have all this great information from which to draw to start to create positioning statements, unique selling propositions, and value propositions. This is the fun part of the project.